All right, good day, everyone. Welcome to this webinar on the Digital Product Passport. Today here, I'm joined by Lucy, who will shortly introduce herself quickly after the introductions. And we'll be having a conversation on the upcoming Digital Product Passport, the DPP, and what it means and how you can prepare for that. But before we get to that, just a quick intro. I'm Stefan Spijkers. I'm co-founder of impending.com. We help you with your product data challenges, be that preparing for the DPP and getting your product data in order, but also fixing your product data process, making sure it runs efficiently, helping you select and structure the IT architecture that works for you now, but also works for you in the coming 5 years. And at the same time, also providing a breadth of knowledge on both of our social media channels that we're most active on. So that is LinkedIn and YouTube, and on our website as well, where we have our free knowledge base and free tools you can use to prepare your own PIM product data journey. With that out of the way, two quick housekeeping objects. One is we'll be recording this session, so if you have to leave early, that's no problem. We'll be sharing the recording with you afterwards. And the other one is we have a Q&A box here on the right-hand side. So if you have any questions, I'll be keeping an eye out on those comments and those questions. You can ask them directly, share them with me or Lucy, and I'll weave them into the conversation. If you're currently struggling with the DPP, you can of course mention that as well. We're very curious where your bottlenecks are or where your questions are, and we have the experts in the room now, so we'd be happy to help you today. If you don't want to share your question, of course, as it is a public platform, I think you can. I already shared Lucy's profile, and I'm pretty sure you can find me on LinkedIn as well. So feel free to send us your questions in a personal message, and we'll pick up the conversation there. But also, if you have found some things that work really well for you, or some enlightening examples of the application of the digital product passport, or maybe cases that have gone horribly wrong, or that got horribly stuck, share them there as well, and we'll touch on those cases during the conversation as well. Now, with that out of the way, maybe Lucy, could you do a quick intro of yourselves and Bombyx?
Yes, of course. So yes, hi there. I am Lucy Blackley, and I am the founder and chief product officer of Bombyx, which is a product lifecycle management system at its core. However, we have three other products, which is the digital product passports, the PIM, and the DAM. And ultimately, those four work together to automate as much as possible, giving a single source of truth that allows you to do something once and use it over and over again.
That does sound efficient, especially when it comes to sort of all the data that you have to manage when it comes to products nowadays, maybe even more so with the impending digital product passport. Maybe for people that are not familiar with the DPP, could you give a quick background, maybe a short history or timeline, and explain what it means for the different industries that are affected?
Yes, so the digital product passports, or the EU DPP, is incoming European legislation where if you receive goods in Europe to be able to then sell them, you need to be able to provide a digital product passport, which allows consumers the power for the first time ever when they're buying purchases. So let's say you're in a supermarket and there's multiple brands in that supermarket, and you're in the clothing section. So clothing's one of the first to come in 2027. And basically, if you scan one brand and scan another, or you scan one brand and the other one doesn't have one, you're ultimately providing a transparent, view of what you do, that product's life cycle, its CO2 emissions, its water usage, how it's cared for, how its end of life will look, and how you can kind of safely do that. It's ultimately, in 2027, so that's in about 6 weeks. You've got 12 months. And quite often people take around less than 52 weeks, but not far off 52 weeks to develop a product from concept to production. And with that, ideally, then you need to be starting in January 2026 if you want to land your products in the EU in January 2027 and it have a digital product passport. It's not absolutely necessary that you start in January 2026, but it is advisable to ensure that you're not rushing at the end and things are getting stuck at customs and then obviously issues arise.
Yeah, having worked with multiple customers over the past few years, I'm afraid that we will see some kind of end of year rush next year, and maybe already. I think you're right that many people, many customers are, and many organizations are already getting ready with their collections and product launches for 27 and onwards, and in that design phase, right? So it makes sense to know what the requirements are from a DPP perspective for those collections and those products already. Now, if you already mentioned sort of the different aspects of the DPP that need to be there, right? What is the different components of the DPP, if that makes sense? And I'm curious if the audience might have any questions on that as well. I would be maybe interested in sort of if you could outline the structure and the roles of different organizations in that value chain, software, right? You have Bombix or a DPP software like Bombix. You have how does that world look basically?
So the structure of the DPP is ultimately the product journey and the product impact. But it depends how you want to do it. So I've seen some DPPs that are already coming onto market and they're done through the website. So it's treated like a web page on the website, which I imagine is a lot of work. I guess making that easier would be a PIM of some form to get it onto the marketplace, so that even though you're not selling directly from it, it can be used as a marketing piece. So product journey, which tells you from tier 4 to tier 0, the journey that product has gone on to get to that store or to that warehouse within Europe, or maybe not in Europe, maybe it's in the UK or the US, and people are then shipping the product. So it's not just people that sell directly in Europe, like on land. It is people that have to then ship products, to the US, from the US or from the UK to Europe. After product journey, you have product impact, which is your CO2 emissions and your water usage. And that breaks down all the different kind of ways that CO2 has kind of come together and how it'll break it down as to where those CO2 emissions and the water usages come from. After that, there is a fair bit of, user instructions. It's really good when, sometimes products are packaged and the instructions are on the pack or on a piece of paper that gets discarded. If you then, obviously, if the QR code goes or the RFID tag wouldn't go, but the QR code, because it's on the packaging, it's about ensuring you have access, or people have access to that QR code, and it is forever. Whilst that product is on the market, it exists for that time. From care user instructions, you've got testing. You need to ensure that you've tested the product, it's safe for the market. So I believe that textiles is the reason why textiles is first is probably due to the fact that it's the second biggest polluter on the planet. And I think for toys, it's not necessarily it will be in part a sustainability thing, but I think it's ultimately safety, because I always call them cowboys. There's a lot of cowboys on the market that will just sell and do absolutely anything to get a product to market without any kind of view on what happens when it gets into the hands of that consumer. So obviously you've got testing. Going back a little bit, you obviously have to make sure that it's visible that your factories are audited and they are ethical, of course. And then, after your durability, you've also got other things such as finer details. So you're giving the barcodes, the UPCs, the EANs, all the information, the granular information about that product identification. And then, of course, you've got the circular dependencies. So the circular dependencies are things where people can view them and understand how to take care of that product, how to repair that product, how to sell on that product, and obviously when it gets to the end of life, how to recycle and dispose of that product safely and in a way where it could be circular and that those materials could go back into something and become a new product.
I mean, I think you're right? So the fact that textiles is, well, not first maybe, but very high on that list is because of the climate impact. That is the original background of the DPP, of the Digital Product Passport regulation, is the green regulation, and the forgot the Green New Deal, I suppose. Even the customers that you see now, or maybe even the industries you now see doing this already in practice, like, are there any specific examples that you have encountered that do this already, and where you would say, like, hey, sharing these is interesting for the audience?
So the clients that are currently onboarding it within our client base, our customers, our partners, they are effectively toys and textiles. So it's the first ones, right? However, there are others looking into it. So we've got clients in supplements, nutrition, that are looking at how can they be the first to show that on the market so that they can kind of give customers a reason to buy into them because they want to be as transparent as possible. But yeah, ultimately it is toys and textiles. And we personally don't have at the moment any battery manufacturers. However, batteries, I think they're already on the market. I think they're already with digital product passports showing the life cycle of that battery. So yeah, ultimately, naturally, the first ones to come to us have been textiles and toys.
Yeah. And would you say, like, what are the biggest challenges that your partners face when like starting with this, right? As you already mentioned, like, we all have to do this maybe in 4 years when it's time for your products then, but a lot of products will be up for the DPP, and I think you're right that we're now in that design phase for many of the products that are going to be affected by this. If not now, they'll probably start with the design in Jan or in Feb, Q1. Like, what is the you see this? What are the sort of hurdles that you see your partners struggle with when it gets to starting with the DPP?
It's ultimately the process. So, I mean, the people that we've spoken to already, you get them in a room with their counterparts, and one will say what the process is, and it immediately spikes a conversation with the others because they see the process as a different way. And actually, without a good process, you're going to have rubbish in and rubbish out, trash in, trash out, however you want to say it. Could say something else, like, but won't go there. But yeah, ultimately, it's the process that people get stuck with. It's how do you pinpoint at what point in the life cycle that item is going to be prepared, ready for the DPP to automatically take that data, bring it into your DPP via PLM, PIM, and also with the addition of digital asset management. They don't know at which point is the process. They don't know who needs to be notified of when. They don't have their critical paths connected, so it's all on a spreadsheet. A lot of the people that we're dealing with are Excel users that have come on and they want the DPP, but actually ultimately they've realized that a PLM is really valuable to save time and resource when they want to bring on the DPP. So it's ultimately about how they can automate it. So usually they come to us for a DPP. and they end up leaving with a PLM because they realize that they can do a lot from the PLM. And actually, it can save time, it can save money, it can save needing to hire someone in a panic towards the end when the legislation's due. It ultimately helps everything to have a PLM, but it's not necessarily just a PLM. You can, I mean, people do, and I don't agree with it, but people feed information that is not required in an ERP to the ERP. They bloat the ERP. It becomes really hard to use. It's really heavy, and actually people have a really bad experience with it. But ultimately, you can take things from certain places and you can automate it in different ways, and you can take it into a PIM. So, but yeah, ultimately, Bombix itself is a PLM that feeds to the PIM, which feeds automatically to the DPP, or it's the PLM that feeds automatically to the DPP. It depends how you set it up. But ultimately, we just want to make it really easy for people to get on with the job, create really, really beautiful products, and then actually not have to increase their workloads or their overheads to produce a DPP by hiring someone extra.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that it is basically, it's unearthing all the sort of backlog that you have and all the sort of skeletons you have in your closet when it comes to your digital transformations gone awry. Because if you don't have that in order, you'll be figuring out that it would have been much smoother if you have that PLM and that PIM and that single repository of all that product data already available, and you don't need to start from scratch, right?
Yeah, I mean, people think that, and I mean, a lot of the DPP softwares that we've seen out there, I mean, it is possible to do it, but I think when people think of it, and some people have thought to monetize off the DPP, which is rightly so. You know, we live in a capitalist world where people need to make money, and you know they have seen a gap in the market, so they will create a DPP. But ultimately, how are you putting that information into the DPP software? Where is that information coming from? So it's still an extra job if you can't automate it.
Yeah, I'm afraid we're gonna, even with all the sort of preparatory work being done, we're still gonna see lots of manual labor, especially towards the sort of end of the deadlines, which reminds me that we maybe should set up a service to help people with that. But I think, I mean, it's better to prevent these issues than to like sort of fix them when it's actually already too late. So as you said, like we're now in the design phase for many of the products that will be part of the DPP. So better to start right now and start monitoring it. Maybe you said also like, hey, bring all the people in the same room because it's different departments being involved in that product data process. Like, can you shed some light on what the different roles are in that conversation and what they bring to the table?
Yeah, I mean, they're very different each time you speak to someone, but yeah, starting with the DPP, I'm not going to try and sell you a PLM, an ERP, a PIM, a DAM. I'm not going to try and sell you anything. What I'm going to try and say is, even if it's on a spreadsheet, get your process written down. So what it looks like is bringing your teams together, all the counterparts that make up that product. So it could be designers, buyers, merchandisers, technologists, product developers, your supply chain. You know, a lot of people are thinking that it's a single, journey, but actually it's a two-way street. If your suppliers want to continue working with you, they should absolutely collaborate with you. And I think sometimes when you're asking for data, suppliers are actually a little bit worried about you taking business away from them. I think the DPP is going to show them that it's more, it's not quite that. And it's more about you working together to ensure that both are providing the data, because sometimes suppliers have more information. Well, all the time suppliers have more information than you do because they are the ones that are actually purchasing, procuring the raw materials, etc. So yeah, getting in a room, understanding who does what. So I always break it down into a process, and I have these things called straight processes. So if it's a straight process, it means it's an end-to-end of one process, and you can go as far as you like into the process. You don't have to stop at certain areas as long as it's end-to-end for that one process. When things start to become parallel, and are happening additionally to that process, so at the same time, you'd span that off as a separate process. So for example, if I'm going to go to concept, from concept to prototype sample, that is one process, because in this scenario that I'm saying, photography and graphics happen at the same time as raising a proto sample. So I'm not going to go concept to prototype, photography, graphics in one, because things are already happening separately to that concept to prototype. And in that, so let's just say it is the concept prototype. Within that, I need to identify what is the first task, where that task will be done. Is it offline or online? When I say offline, is it a meeting where you're speaking actively? And online is where the data is going to be put down. So if I say, what is the task? Where is that task going to be, curated, done, etc.? Who is going to do that task? And then what is going to happen once that task is done? Who is the next person in line? Who needs to be informed to do the next job? It sounds really simple, and it is really simple. I say it's really simple. It can take people weeks and weeks to get this together, because there's a lot of people don't believe that that's the way that it's done, because so many different ways are happening within the business. But actually, getting you down to a single way of working is absolutely the way to go. We are working with a $1 billion group, so that's over 10 companies, and we have narrowed them, so they're slightly different to each other. One does one product, another does another, and another does another, and they're different products, so ultimately they should have different processes and different terminology. It's okay. You don't have to have a single process for all of the companies if they are in different sectors of product. All you have to do is ensure that you're kind of aligned. So if one sector is doing concept to prototype, it's ensuring that everyone is aware of what the certain terminologies are called, and they can differ in the other sectors. You don't need to bring everything together, because one sector will have something slightly different to another. So if you're bringing 10 to 15 companies together, which not many people are, they're bringing one or two together, it's okay to separate them off. And in there, just get everyone aligned. So this company that had, about 15 businesses, they ultimately have several that are all doing the same thing, but they're all doing it slightly differently with slightly different names. Get them in a room and empower them to do one single way of working, which sounds easier than it actually is, but it is possible. And once people start working together, they then realize actually they actually have support that they didn't think they had before. It's actually a really empowering exercise to bring your company together and actually increase your culture at the same time as working toward producing the digital product passport.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I said customers, you said partners. Also because I think that the process you're describing right now feels to me like a true consultative partnership. Like it's not you throw the solution across the table to them and have them implement it. No, there's also, I mean, this is real process work, right? And I think it's very recognizable, not just for the 1 billion euro turnover company with 10 business units. I think the same process and the same miscommunications and misalignments and realignments need to happen for the small, I mean, single brand product company that needs to start building their processes and maybe writing them down for the first time to align all the different stakeholders inside the company and outside of the company.
Yeah.
That's real process work. That's not just providing a tool. How does that work in practice? Like, is it always that you sit down with the partner to explain how this work and how this works and then sort of configure the project or configure the tooling with that in mind?
So yeah, I mean, ultimately, we've actually now provided it to all our partners. So it's not just to one or two. We've realised that actually when you go back into their product with them, you realize that things have been done a slightly different way and it's maybe not as efficient as it should be. And it's usually a growth problem because sometimes brands grow too big, too fast, and they don't have the capacity to kind of, set the foundations. So when we started, we do it with all, and we've gone back into current clients and said, when we always check in with them. So we're a little bit of a different provider of software. We consider ourselves product people, and therefore we don't sell software. We consult with product people. We are the product people consulting with other product people. Obviously, we do sell a software, but we do more than that. We are at the end of the phone, at the end of a Teams, at the end of a Google Meet, for people to come to us and say, I'm a bit stuck and I don't know how to do this. I think what's happened is some of the big players have shot themselves in the foot in essence, because all they do is sell. They just sell software, and what they do is they say, thank you for the check, off you go and work it out yourselves. And it actually delays implementation because people don't know what to do. It's overwhelming. When you think of a system, there's a lot to do on it. They're very complex. People don't know where to go. All they know for the last 10 years or longer, they've worked on Excel, or they've worked in an ERP, or they've worked on another PLM. And when they come to something less legacy and more modern, they don't actually know what to do. And there's no, big companies can say, oh, it takes 3 months or 8 weeks to get online. It doesn't, because people don't start using it for the first 6 months until the C-suite go, wait a minute, I've spent loads of money on this and nobody's using it. And then once people start using it, because they've got a much shorter scale of time, they then end up kind of rushing it and not really thinking anything through. And then it just becomes something that they get stuck with. What we try to do is say, okay, lay out that. So we are going to implement it into Bombix in the next year, where actually it's part of using Bombix and how people set up projects. But for now, it's on stuff like spreadsheets, Trello boards, and stuff like that. So things that the companies are already using and they're comfortable with. And it's just setting up the process. And we sit with them and we say, okay, what's the first step? Okay, who does it go to next? Okay, you're doing it. What do you do? Who's next? Who's next? Who's next? And you can get it done in a day or two, depending on the size of the company. And it just resets people. So when you're doing that, ultimately, you're allowing people to get started sooner, start reaping the rewards of what they're spending their money on, and actually going, and actually having a way of working that actually is producing clean data. Clean data is the most important thing in the DPP. If you call something 100% CO, which is cotton, or 100% cotton, or 100% CTTM, it's not a system. People aren't working in the right way. With an Excel, with a Smartsheet, with a Trello, with a Jira, with a Monday.com, whatever, you can do whatever you like. And what I'm finding in big box companies is that you can also do the same in them. And it's actually not creating a system. You need to start to say, what is our terminology? How we were presenting information, because let's say people are using a PLM. Your PLM is saying one thing, your ERP is saying another, and your PIM is saying another. And there's going to start to be roadblocks in those places. So ultimately, getting started by just having that conversation 1 to 2 days, locked in a room, don't look at your emails from your suppliers, and actually start to get things done. Once that's in place, you can be up and running within a week. And I'm not saying fully up and running, but you can start to implement those processes to being able to produce clean data that actively gets pushed towards the DPP, removing the need for additional workloads, additional headcounts, and you can actually focus a lot more on product development as opposed to just doing admin for admin's sake.
So much things that I want to discuss based on what you just said, Lucy. I think there's so many important points, right? Like as you say, it's about helping the product people design better products faster, right? It's not about selling the software. At least that is what we see sometimes, and I'm always a bit disappointed when especially with larger businesses and larger solutions that are out there, that the implementation partners, right, the system integrators have a better understanding of the tooling than the people at the company themselves, because they're closer to the customer, because they're actually using the product in practice, because they're going through those sessions as you just described. Um, and yeah, it is true that you really need to just bring everyone together and get started. It is also, I think, not as a unsurmountable problem as you might think it is before you get started, and you can just break it down and do it step by step, or supplier by supplier, or collection by collection. It is not something you just have to like do all in one go and build it up from 0 to 100% in one big go live, which I would definitely not recommend to anyone in any software project, but also not in this case. Um, One thing that I found especially interesting is the clean data. Can you talk a bit more about that? What is clean data, and how do you get there?
Well, you may get from rubbish, let's call it dirty data. You might get it to something that's a little bit tidier. You might get it to, it's a process, right? You don't start, we've had people that come in, they have a go on a system, and then they halfway through they start cleaning it up, which is a job in itself. And I'm not saying that's easy to do when start hierarchies and products start getting attached to each other. But, starting with something is obviously the way to go, but actually just doing that little bit of preparation, that pre-preparation before going onto a system, if you're going to go onto a system. You may choose to stay in Excel and SharePoint and Drives and etc. And that's totally fine if it works for you. It's your company. You will know ultimately the best way of working. So it's not about coming and saying, you need a system, you need a software. There's so many ways to do one single thing. But you've also got to remember that we are a very small industry. If we walked down a road in Hong Kong today, we would both probably see people that we know. The industry is so small. They all stay in the same hotels. They all go to the same countries to produce their goods, or the majority do at least. Why aren't you asking each other what you do and what is the best way of working? Why aren't you asking people what's their best practice? What's the pitfalls of it? What's the, what's the benefits of it? And why aren't you coming back and saying, hey, X does this and why do this? Why are we doing it this way? And honestly, some people don't want to change. We do get partners that some of their teams don't want to change, and that is a real struggle. Unfortunately, if you don't start to change the way that you work and integrate some form of technology, again, it doesn't have to be an ERP, a PLM, a PIM, a DAM, a DPP software. It has to work for you, but ultimately it's a process. But that process has to lead you to doing less administration. I've worked in companies and I've left companies before that grow so big, they're only really bothered about the data and approving the process, that they become less bothered about the product. Ultimately, if you ever put that product on the shelf with a DPP, it's going to be very straightforward that you are just bringing a product to market for the sake of making money. And of course, all products are that. They're all about making money. They're all about keeping a business alive and reinvesting those funds. However, if you scan those two QR codes, I think it's going to be really clear as to who really cares, and they exist to kind of bring that product to life. Maybe not quite, maybe that's a bit extreme, but you can see who's passionate about it, and you see who you buy from. People ultimately buy from people. I buy from people. You care about the people behind it. So just going back to what does clean data look like? It's just everyone we go in, let's take textiles for example. Some people call it a gold seal, some people call it a production sample, some people call it a top sample. Some companies and companies I've been in, those three terminologies are happening in one company because one person has come from one company into another has been there for 20 years, and another is coming to another. It's about resetting and understanding those goalposts you need to hit to ensure that actually everyone's speaking the same language. I just think that there's so many companies out there not speaking the same language. And actually, as I've said, it sounds really analog and it sounds really non-digital, and it really is. Get in a room and write down, what do I do? What's the next job? You know, and it really is as simple as that. How do I communicate that? You know, as simple as, can I automate this message? If I've done that job and I tick that box, can I automatically send that message to someone so that I'm not having to type out that message straight away? The chat, you know, that chat message might be something that you start with, but it's not what you should end with. Start somewhere, get a little bit better, look back on that step, and then go again and say, how can I improve that one step further? This isn't a 1 month process. Obviously, you can start and you can get to the DPP in time, but actually, generally, digital transformation, which is what I think the DPP is going to bring for a lot of people, it's minimum a 2-year process. You've got your first year to get into action and start doing things in a different way. But by the end of that first year, you should have, and it sounds like a long time, but I mean, it's nearly Christmas now, and it was January 2 weeks ago. So, you know, getting into that step with your process and taking those 12 months, that's going to fly by. Get it to where you need by from month 1 to month 12. And from month 12, for the next 12 months, you should be able to use the system or your way of working, your platforms, your spreadsheets in a way that you're going to go ahead. I'm not going to say forever because things always change, but they're going to go as if that's the best way. And then you slowly start to bring things in over time if things need to change, which ultimately they will, because business is ever evolving. And ever since AI, ever since, these modular systems, these more modern, contemporary, price competitive systems are coming about on the market, evolution is just natural in the process.
What I love about this, it's not about the DPP really, right? It is the DPP is just the end result, and as you mentioned, it is not. There's DPPs and there's DPPs, and there's DPPs that are just there because we have to do it, and the EU mandates it, and there's zero passion in it, or it's a showcase for how much you care about the product and the end user, and you use it to continue that relationship that you have with the customer and with the end user of your product, right? Because normally it's just, it leaves the shop and that's that. Maybe it comes back for repairs. Even in the case of fashion nowadays, it's more often repaired. I think it's still ways to go, but you don't see that customer again, or you don't see that pair of clothing again. But with the DPP, you can at least continue that conversation. And there's so much more you can do with it than just the bare minimum. So that is, I think, already super inspiring, and use this as an opportunity not just to do the bare minimum, but really go above and beyond what you like. See it as an opportunity, and see it as an opportunity from a brand product perspective, or customer relationship perspective. That's one part. The other opportunity that DPP offers is indeed what you already mentioned, which, yes, costs time and effort, and yeah, the money probably as well. But it is about, it starts not with the tool or the DPP, but it starts with the people in one room, getting them to talk about the end result, which is maybe a digital representation of the product, but it is the product itself as well, and what the steps are, going back from the end product in the hands of the customer all the way to the initial design phases and or sampling process. And then, well, first getting it out there and discussing it with the people, and then trying to discover what the process is there,
Yeah.
and just like creating insight, writing it down, which then will allows you to maybe improve it or capture it in a tool. And I find it interesting that you say, hey, you should change your process to match the tooling. I think I agree with you based on what we have seen at our customers is, yes, there's tools that allow you to configure everything up to like the color of a button or like details that you wouldn't think would matter. But generally, we don't see that as the right path to success, as all these tools should also just be offering you some sort of scaffolding or structure that you can use to improve your own process as well, right? So yes, you are unique and you have a process that works for you as an organization, but you have been building this tool with your partners, with 10, 15 partners. And as you said, we're all doing the same thing. Let's just talk to each other and learn from each other and not just look inward and navel gaze and say, hey, this is how we've been doing it for 30 years, and we're going to do it for the coming 30 years as well. No, talk to each other, talk to your solution providers or your system integrator, well, anyone really, and discuss and learn how they are doing it right now.
Yeah.
It,
If you've got solution providers and you're going to them and saying, what do I do? And they're ultimately sending you a price list, I would think about how long that relationship will last with those people, because ultimately they're wanting to sell you a product and they're not wanting to implement the best practices or the best ways of working, right? And when yes, we all do have unique products, and you can work with systems that are out of the box. You don't need to configure everything. At the end of the day, yes, you can do it in your way, but ultimately, every product company needs a concept, a design, they need a bill of materials, they need a specification sheet, they need to know what those measurements are, they need to know what tests need to be produced, what care instructions need to be produced, they need to sample that product, they need to cost it, they need to raise a purchase order, it needs maybe a freight forwarder, they all need exactly the same things. So yeah, don't think your product is unique. It's why you exist on the market. It's your USP. But don't think that softwares don't understand what you can do. It's just, unfortunately, there's a lot of softwares out there that just want to replicate what you do, but they're not kind of saying, hey, these are the best practices that we've received from other people. What have a think? And it's not saying that you can't make your own decisions. You absolutely can. But, I just think sometimes you'll get a legacy software system that will, they'll come to you, they'll fit it to your process, and you get stuck and you can't evolve. And if you want to evolve, you have to buy another version of the system for updates, etc. Get on a system if you are going to go on a system. If you're not, that's absolutely fine. But, if you are going to get on a system, get on something that is out of the box, but it's constantly developed and evolving, and get with people that actually care about products. Some of these people, they don't understand products, they just understand software. Software is a different type of product. It's not a physical product. It acts in a very different way. It's all about community, and the DPP is going to create communities. We have clients, and I do a lot of research on clients. I'm not a fan of things like Reddit, but there's a lot of Reddit threads that actually have communities on there, and I didn't know it. We have a leather bags company, and it's really going through an evolutional design change. It's gone from something that was for a customer that is it's not nice to say, but effectively they're dying out. They now need to focus on a new customer and give a new customer what they want. And the Reddit threads are going wild for this new design direction. They absolutely love it. And I believe that the DPP can create communities further. And I think people should be, going into this and thinking, wow, I can create that community. But ultimately as well, us as product people, we are a community of people. It's a large industry, but it's very small. Everyone knows everyone, And I think, hone in on those communities, because they're going to change the way that you work and ultimately bring you more opportunities. The DPP isn't a checkbox exercise. It is, if you want to see it that way, but effectively it's more than legislation. It is a way that you are going to market your products into the future. And if other people can't match your passion and the way that you do things, you are going to win, over those people that ultimately are doing it just to check a box, when you're doing it for a community of people that come back time and time again.
Right. Well, it's almost like a marriage with your solutions and your partners, right? It's also not something I mean, like a marriage, not something you end up with. At least you hope not breaking up with them after just a year or less than a year. These partnerships usually tend to last 7, 10, 12 years. I'm not sure what the average marriage lifetime is, but I think I'm afraid
50%
that's
end in
pretty much.
divorce.
Yeah.
So, yeah, 50% end in divorce, and some are sooner than others. I don't know the statistics. It's not something I keep track of. But yeah, it's, it's, you don't have to leave them as well. It just needs to work for you, It needs to work for you. It needs to give you some adaptability and some ways of, if I want to change this, how easy is it for me to change? This is not it's not a technology problem, the DPP, it's a people problem. And everyone's panicking about the legislation, panic about not being relevant to a global customer base. That's what you should be panicking about, because the more we get into this and the more we're looking towards environmental strategies, this is just the norm. And actually, if you bake sustainability into your design, you've got nothing to worry about. You are already doing these things. And those people that think they're not doing them, and it is a tick box exercise, you're already doing it. That data is somewhere, and it's just about bringing it together, taking it from all the disparate systems, looking on a piece of paper and saying, okay, how do I connect these? Why aren't these talking to these? It's not a software problem, it's a people problem.
No, it is, but that's the beauty of the industry, that it all starts and ends with the people. Maybe last time we spoke about the next steps that you could take preparing for the DPP, even if you were not like in the market for a solution at that stage, or there was maybe not enough momentum at your company to do something with the DPP. I think that might have changed, but back then the recommendation was, hey, start with your data, right? And you can
Yeah.
already start tomorrow with getting that data in shape. You said during this interview or during this webinar already, hey, you need to get that clean data anyway, and it is a great foundation, regardless of whether you need the DPP tomorrow or in 2 years. Has anything changed on that recommendation? Like, if you would now recommend anyone, well, it's Friday, so let's say next Monday, it's then 5 weeks until the end of the year. What should they do? What are the next steps?
Start a conversation, sit down, plan out your process. My stance on what I said whenever the last time was we did it, I can't remember now, but my stance is very much the same. I'm not here to sell software, but I would love to see that I can make an impact on somebody's way of working and actually get them thinking about it. Because hopefully at the end of this webinar, someone's going to go away and go, absolutely, that person's right. We do have that information. And if we don't know where it is, maybe that's the time. You've got 5 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever it is until the end of the year. Maybe just spend 1 or 2 days before the end of the year, if you have time, and get that stuff written down, so that in the new year, you come with a fresh perspective and you go, okay, how do we implement this? What do we clean up? Is our data on Excel? And there's, you've got smart sheets and there's API calls to certain ERP functions, or you've got a PLM or a PIM, how can we access that same data? Usually, if you've got something and you do have an ERP and you are using smart sheets or Excel, there are things in place already, but someone who's brought them together maybe hasn't thought about the end journey, and actually things are just in a bit of disarray, but it's not unfixable. You can completely fix it. I think just, get talking and get speaking to people. I speak about it all the time. I think a lot of people probably get a bit tired of me, but this is my product, is my passion. I never ended up wanting to get into technology, but I got into technology because I thought there was a better way of doing things, and I thought there was something needed with more heart and soul. And actually, I think whilst the majority of technology companies are trying to reduce the amount of people in their workforces, actually, I think people are a key point to technology. As I've said, people buy from people, and it's not like you don't have to physically buy something, but it could be you resonate with them or something like that. So yeah, talk to me, talk to you, Stefan. People, we are a community of an industry. I mean, we've all got LinkedIn profiles, and the majority of us use them. Those people that use them are obviously passionate about something. Why would they have a LinkedIn profile talking about their product if they weren't passionate? We're all happy to talk to each other and say, hey, can you give me 15 minutes? I just want to talk about something. Most people will say yes. Most people want to help people. And I think, yeah, by all means, talk to me, talk to Stefan, talk to my colleague Neil, who's got a lot of experience in it. Just talk to someone and get started. It doesn't have to cost you a fortune, but actually, whatever it does cost, I'm pretty sure if you do it right and you lead with your heart, you can actually recoup those costs, because you're doing it the right way and you're going to outsell to competitors that maybe don't care about something the way that you care about it.
Exactly. I love that. That's a great message of hope, and I'm not tired of hearing it at all. No, I also like that it's like, even if it seems like a huge challenge because you're coming from the Excel sheets or the ERP, like, it's also just about getting started and getting the people in the room and
Yeah,
discussing each problem one by one.
it's not even usually about ERPs or spreadsheets. It is about that people. I mean, we haven't got a lot of information off the EU, unfortunately. People don't know where to start, and people already are overworked. So they've got to get that product to market. The last thing they can think about is another task, another project. But actually, it doesn't need to be as hard as people think it is. And I think opening up conversations, people will realize very soon that it will take a village, but that village is already around you, and it's not as hard as you first envisage.
All right. That's, I think, a great way to end this conversation, and a great point to end this conversation on. Lucy, thanks so much for joining us again and
You're very
sharing
welcome.
your wisdom and insights. And I think if people want to learn more, they will know where to find you. And as part of that community, I think, yeah, there's plenty of people around that want to help, even without pushing the product or pushing the solution, pushing the consulting. Um, really hope we can have you back soon, maybe when the first fallout of the DPP
Oh
implementations
gosh, yeah,
are
anytime,
happening.
yeah,
So
yeah. It'll be an
you,
interesting conversation back when it
yes,
was all going
yeah,
off, but exciting nonetheless.
yeah, yeah. You'll be around by then. We'll be around, and
Yeah,
yeah, we'll then also be trying to help still.
yeah. And remember, it's just a start. The DPP that's coming, anything is better than nothing. So just getting started, I think that's all the EU right now are encouraging. But if you can do more, then just getting started, do it, because it'll get easier as time goes on. But yeah, just getting started is enough right now.
Yeah, cool, love it. Thanks, Lucy, for joining us today.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you if you have joined us from wherever you are, and I want to wish you a happy Friday and a good weekend, and see you soon on one of our other webinars. Talk soon. Thanks so
Thank you.
much.